All right, we're back. It's COMP397, and it's week 1, lesson 1, part 3, right, of our series. Last time we talked about, we did a kind of a preview of all the little tools we're going to be using for at least this first part. We didn't do Create.js yet, and I want to kind of talk about Create.js a little bit, and also do another example of another app we're going to build in Visual Studio from scratch again, just because we got to practice, right? So let's finish off this GitHub stuff first to talk about GitHub and what this thing is. So remember last time we said we would create a repository, and GitHub is just a container, a place to hold our code, and we do a few things with GitHub. Remember my favorite things to do in GitHub, version control, we talked about that. You keep your code in one place. Again, you don't need to use a stick. And collaborate, work with somebody else, right? Those are the 3 reasons we use GitHub. You downloaded and installed the client, and then we created our first repository, which would be COMP397 lesson 1, part 2. We're going to do another one, okay? In Visual Studio, we tried this out as well. We kind of started Visual Studio, and then when we clicked a new project, we went to this empty project. And from here, after we did the empty project, it says, you know, there's a couple of things we can do. We can add solution to source control later, or we can add it from the beginning. If we go back to here, where it shows you this little check mark, right? Let's do it the other way around. All right, so let's go back to Visual Studio. Start this off with me, right? So I'm starting it fresh, like I just started Visual Studio. I just woke up, I had my coffee, I'm going to start going, right? And by the way, when you start learning anything, if you want to learn C#, right? Actually, how about this? If you want to learn Greek, you got to speak Greek every day, right? Otherwise, you know what? I can say some words and then you won't remember, right? Because just you've only heard it a couple times. Like for example, here, let's say this together. If I say good morning, right? I'm going to say good morning in Greek. I'm going to say kalimera. So you guys just say it with me now. Kalimera. Say kalimera. Kalimera, right? It means good morning in Greek, right? Okay, now you learn one word in Greek. I'm going to test you on this word, right? I'm not going to talk about it again. I'm not going to say this thing again. And then tomorrow I'm going to ask you, or the next time I see you, I'm going to say, well, how do you say good morning in Greek? Because none of you are going to remember, right? Kalimera. Remember in consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. Kali means good. Mera, feminine word with an A on the end, is day, right? Good day is really what I'm saying. Okay, so if that's true, we need to do the same thing for C#, for JavaScript, for our tools we use, Visual Studio. We have to practice over and over again, right? And the way to do that, of course, is to do this stuff again and again. Let's do it. So we're going to say new project in Visual Studio, right? Again, I'm going to go to C# web in this tree, right? On the top, there's ASP.NET web application. Click that, right? On the bottom, if you notice, it's going to give you the name web application 1. We want to change that name to our own. We're going to call this COMP397 lesson 01-part 3, right? Because now we've made part 2 before. Here's part 3. And this time, I don't want you to click this Create New Git Repository one. I want to unclick this. We're going to find out how to do it later on, right? I do want this Create Directory for Solution checked. And I want you to click OK. Then you're going to click Empty. None of these should be checked. That's important not to have any of these checked. And again, we're making some assumptions here, ladies and gentlemen, today. We're assuming that you have Visual Studio 2013 with Update 4 and Visual Studio Web Essentials for Update 4 installed in your system. Those 2 things you need to have for this course, okay? If you don't have that, don't worry. You have time to get it from now until the next class, which is next week, right? None of this is checked. We're going to press OK. Okay, Sonia, what do we do now? Ali, come on, you're the best guy. What do we do now? I need an index file, right? I need an index file. I know Sonia. Sorry, see, Sonia told me her name. That's it. Now she's my favorite because I know her name. I'm joking, guys. I'm joking, guys and girls. What's that? You don't mind? No problem, because you're on YouTube right now and everyone's listening to you, right? Keep going. All right, so Ali, you're going to do it for me. So what do I do first? Right click. Yeah. I'm going to go new or add. Existing item. Oh, wait. HTML page. That's right. There's 2 ways to do it. You can go add new item, or you can go add HTML page, right? Those are the 2 options. Let's go to HTML page this time around, right? Here I'm going to put in my index.html, right? for the first time. This is the second time you're seeing this now, right? I'm going to make this bigger for you guys to see this, right? All right, what if we were to knock all this stuff off? Do you remember how to do this by, from scratch? Let's see what happens, right? So I got nothing in my file. I'm going to save this file, so it's an empty index.html file, and I want to do this from scratch. If I type HTML, is that enough? And now when I do my shorthand, I'm doing tab, or tab, right? If I go tab, right, it just gives me my HTML, right? If I go HTML5, does that do anything? It does, right? So if you have the Zen coding Visual Studio Web Essentials 2013 for Update 4, right? You can do this. If you don't have it, you're SOL, right? You know what SOL means, right? I'm not going to tell you, but it means you're in trouble, right? You have to do it by hand, right? Well, let's say if I want to type it by hand, I could type this by hand, and then we're still missing some things. Let me go back to the way we started off. We started like this. So if you're here, it's okay, right? And I just did undo to get here. Okay, I undo all the way. I want to get rid of this thing here, this XMLNS piece. I want to get rid of this. This is our standard way of doing things. We're going to replace this with lang for language, L-A-N-G. If you notice, Visual Studio gives us our IntelliSense, right? If I press Enter, it's going to give me IntelliSense to say, what language do you want? We want English, right? Not Greek, unfortunately, but English, right? Does that make sense? All right, now inside of our head, the head of our file, usually this is where we have additional instructions for the browser. One of them is the title of our page. But before the title, we're going to put in a meta tag, like we showed before, meta. And we're going to put the character set, right? And we're going to choose UTF-8. And if you notice, it starts typing it for me. I'm not doing a lot of the typing here. Visual Studio is doing this for me, right? We're going to do this at the beginning of every document index.html we do. Next, meta tag, just for mobile, because we have to be mobile conscious these days, right? Name is equal to viewport. So we're going to change or we're going to be sensitive to viewport size. And we're going to say our content is equal to width is equal to, width is equal to device width, initial scale 1, which basically says we're going to match up the width of our screen to the size of our viewport. Okay, cool. So we've got this piece down. Don't worry about the reason why it does this to me. Mine is very big. That's why it does this stuff. If I was to make my font smaller, it wouldn't wrap around like that. Okay? All right, so cool. So here's my viewport. I need to put a title in here. We're going to put in COMP397 again, except it's going to be Lesson 01, Part 3. We're going to put some bigger title in here, Part 3. Okay, cool. We've got that in there. Now, Albert, let's see if he's listening, right? What's the next thing we do? We've got their index.html file. We need to do something over here from a folder structure perspective. What's the first folder we need to create? Or one of the first folders? See, I heard. Who said that? Was it Sonia? Was it you? Right? Oh, what was your name again? So you're going to teach me Greek now, right? Anyways, yes, thank you. It's CSS. So right-click. We're going to go the same way we did in index.html, add, right? And we're going to go to folder, new folder. By the way, there's different folders here. Be very careful. Do not add an ASP.NET folder. That would be very bad, all right? Just do a new folder, right? And then in here, we're going to rename this thing to CSS. Okay, cool. What other folders do we need? Scripts. Scripts is important. Why am I making it scripts and not JS? JS seems to be a more popularized way of doing things. Well, because Microsoft likes scripts, and when we use typings later on, we'll show you later on, it's going to add scripts anyway, so we might as well add it for Microsoft, scripts. All right, under scripts, we need a lib folder where we're going to hold all of our libraries. So we're going to go new folder, lib, right? Library folder. You can actually type library if you want. Lib or libs, bin is another way of some people put that. That's very common. We're going to go back to our project level, and we're going to add a new folder, outer level, assets. And the reason why I want to break out my assets aside, when we're creating our folder structure here for our game, because that's what we're making here, we're making games, our folder structure for our game, for our assets, right, should be separate. And the same thing goes inside of our asset folder. We're going to add a couple of new folders. We haven't populated them. We're not going to populate them probably today either. One of them is going to be called images, right? And another one is going to be audio. You can also call it sound. It's very popular. You can also add another folder called fonts. I like to have all my different assets. There's many other ones you can put in here as well. You can also differentiate different kinds of images, 2D images, 3D images, all kinds of stuff in here if you're doing WebGL. But you should definitely have some kind of folder structure that makes sense. And by the way, when you do your assignment, you're going to be marked on folder structure, right? It's very important for you guys to do this. Please don't put it in one flat structure. That would be bad, right? And it's also pretty archaic these days. We don't do that. Okay, let us go into the next piece. So I've got a couple things. I need some CSS. So I'm going to right click on the CSS and we're going to say add, and I'm going to add a new style sheet, right? And I'm going to call this main or game or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it main for now. It gives us a basic body tag with nothing in it. Let's leave it the way it is and close it up. It actually puts a new tab inside of our Visual Studio 2013. Okay, and now I want to add it to my head, the head of my document. I'm going to make a space here by entering a space, and then I'm going to drag and drop it like I showed you last time, right? And all this does creates a connection between the index.html, which is our central document for our game, right, with all the other assets that are outside of our document. Okay, so our CSS file is here. We haven't really done anything yet with the CSS, just that. And then inside the body, now you might say, you might have seen JavaScript here in the head. I'm going to steer you away from that in this course. We're going to do all our JavaScript in the bottom of the body tag inside of our code. Okay, why? It's more modern and it doesn't let us wait for the JavaScript to load before the page loads, right? I want the page to load first and then the JavaScript to load, all right? So it's kind of a tactic, if you will. I'm going to put in a comment. In the comment, we put a less than sign, exclamation mark, and dash dash. It creates our comment, and we're going to say kind of a JavaScript section, right? Because this is where we put our JavaScript section. In fact, if anything, I should put another comment up here as well. That kind of gives us our CSS section. If we have more than one CSS file, that's where it would be in here, right? Here's a JavaScript section. If you're documenting, right? If you're documenting your file, you might also want to put in some documentation underneath your HTML tag. So let's say, for example, if you want to put your author name, right? And then you're probably going to be asked to do this as well. I'm going to just copy and paste here, right? Maybe today's date, right? You know, something like, what is it, May 5th today? May, return of the 5th, what is it, return of the 5th? Right, sorry, May 5th, 2015. May the 4th be with you, return of the 5th, okay. Sorry, I'm a Star Wars fan. May 5th, 2015. And again, there's other things you can put up here. I'm going to give you some stuff to put into your document to show it's you, right? And so on. Here's my JavaScript section. And, okay, cool. I want to put a new script file. Right-click on scripts, not on the lib file, but the scripts file, and add. And here's what we did last time. We did a TypeScript file. And I'm going right to TypeScript and not JavaScript. There will be times we go into JavaScript only in future lessons, because I want to talk about JavaScript on its own, right? We don't need TypeScript to do what we're doing. In fact, TypeScript is JavaScript with syntactic sugar, extra stuff, basically, to give us more power. Okay, let's go TypeScript file. TypeScript file, we're going to call it game for now, right? And press OK. Now it asks us for this search for TypeScript typings. Typings are type definition libraries that help us define classes outside of Visual Studio 2013 and JavaScript. For example, if I want to use jQuery and TypeScript, and what TypeScript does is it gives us code hinting. Why do you use TypeScript? You use TypeScript to give us extra help when we make JavaScript files, right? Because JavaScript looks like spaghetti code sometimes when you look at it. And one of the things that developers hate about JavaScript is it looks really unstructured, right? TypeScript helps us tighten things up a little bit, right? So of course we do want to search for typings, and I want you to search for a couple things later on. But for now, let's press no. Okay, it populates this file in a new tab, game.ts, right? This time we're not going to choose that crazy class example, right? What I want you to do is I want you to just skip down a couple lines and go var function. This is pure type JavaScript now. And we're going to say my function name, and actually, let me go back. If I just type function like this, oops, function with no var, and I name the function, like for example, init, right? This is one way of creating a function in JavaScript, right? It's perfectly valid, right? So we're going to talk about this a little bit. Inside my init function, and there's different ways of declaring functions and methods in JavaScript. The other way, for example, is to do it this way. Instead of this, here, I'm just going to I'm going to comment this out. I like to call this putting it in stasis, right? So I'm going to put this in stasis, right? So now it's not going to be touched. There we go. That's a way of multi-line commenting, right? Just like it does in C#. Same. Or any C-style language. Okay, I want to do the same thing. So instead of function, I'm going to say, like I said before, var init, right, is equal to function, right, is also a valid way of declaring a JavaScript function. What's the difference? Why do I want to do it one way over the other? Or does anyone have an idea? What would be the advantage to do it one way or the other? You're going to see this a lot, by the way, this methodology. If you do any kind of JavaScript functions, you're going to see this method. Well, there really isn't an advantage one over the other. This is very popular. Why? Because what we're doing here is we're saying here is an unnamed function, right? And in JavaScript, a lot of times they use something called an anonymous function. That's what this thing is. It's anonymous. We don't have a name for it yet. But we're declaring an alias. Here's a variable, init. And we're saying this variable, init, is an alias for this anonymous function. That's what we're saying. I personally think this is a lot cleaner, right? But this is very common, and you'll see this in JavaScript examples online, right? So if you see this methodology, and we're going to get back to this later on when we talk about JavaScript next week, right? It's okay. It means the same thing as this. I just think this is cleaner. So we're not going to use this for now. Okay, so let's get rid of that. And that's why I commented this, so I can uncomment it and go back to this. All right, cool. If I just put console.log is like console.writeline. Okay, that's what it is. Log is the way we output to JavaScript, right? And I'm going to kind of say, game is running right in here. A little bit different. So function init, when this function is starts to run, I'm just putting it in a couple lines down. If you notice, JavaScript doesn't care about white space. I can also do this, just like C#, and it would run the exact same way, right? For now, just to make it neater for us to see everything, we're going to put it together, but you don't have to, right? In fact, in JavaScript, we don't need this either. If I take away the semicolon, we don't need it, right? It's bad. It's bad form. And I recommend highly that you put a semicolon behind every JavaScript command line that you put in. Any kind of executable, you put a semicolon. But you don't need it, which means you can make big mistakes if you're not careful, right? And that's why TypeScript is here to help us out. Okay, so that's the first thing. So we've got this simple JavaScript file, a function we named init, right? And remember, with functions, the way we call them is we have to call the function name, just like we do in C#. So we would call init, right? Once we put the word init in there, the function is called, right? But we need to do that, because we're making it an HTML document, we need to do that somewhere in here. First of all, in this index.html document, does this document know right now about the game.js file? No, because it's not connected. Just like if we didn't put this main.css file in here, if we didn't connect it, it wouldn't know about it. We need to include this inside of our document. So we're going to drag and drop our game.ts file, right? And don't worry about these little messages I'm getting. I'm going to drag and drop this game.ts file in here, and it becomes a game.js file because TypeScript, remember, it can't be compiled. It can't be run in a browser, TypeScript. TypeScript has to be transcompiled first into JavaScript and then run in a browser. So inside of our index.html, when we drag and drop game.ts inside of our index.html file, Visual Studio automatically changes the ending from TS to JS, right? You can't see it, but if I go to this little button right here, which is to the left on the top here, and if I click it, it actually shows me some hidden files, and one of them is this game.js file right here. So you can actually look at it. Here's the game.js file, right? In fact, in this particular case, our game.js file and our game.ts file are identical because I'm not doing anything differently. In fact, like I said before, TypeScript is JavaScript just with extra stuff. All right? Now, if you can't do this, don't worry about it because your version of Visual Studio may be slightly different than mine. And your install might be slightly different than mine. But it's okay because it still will generate this game.js file when you transcompile. All right, let me just undo this. Go back to here. Okay, cool. So we've got this thing here, right? It's going to run, but if I ran it like this, we need something to kick off that init function. And the way to do that, of course, the easiest way, I'm going to show you other ways, but the easiest way is to do this. On load, like we showed you last time, there is a event handler that kicks off or that triggers when the body of the document is loaded. And we're going to use that event handler to basically point to a callback function, in this particular case, init. We can also call this, the event listener is on load. The event handler is our init function. Right? So this is init. Oops. Now, sometimes you see people not putting the semicolon in there. That's okay too. It'll still run. It may not be the right thing to do. Okay, now that we've got this piece in here, right? If I was to debug it by pressing this button right here, it's going to run it in Chrome, right? If I've done everything correctly, I should be able to run it right here. And if you notice, there's nothing in here, right? It doesn't show anything. Why? I haven't done anything in my HTML. But let's take a look in this hamburger here. That's what I like to call it. If you're using Chrome, in IE it's slightly different, and in Firefox it's also different. I'm going to go down to JavaScript Console. You can also press F12. If you notice, it's going to give me this initial error. Don't worry about it. Just refresh. And if you notice, it says game is running. So actually what I've done is I've gone into this file here, game.js, into here, and run this function, and the only command I have in this function is console.log. That's all it's doing, right? So that's what the first thing is. Okay, any questions up to this point? We kind of did this already, right? Now, how do we connect this up to GitHub, right? Because we want to kind of push it up to GitHub and all this kind of stuff, right? How do we do this inside here? Well, I have Solution Explorer. I'm going to stop debugging, right? And if I go to Team Explorer, I could certainly try and do this, but there's a problem, isn't there? I didn't add my file to Solution Control. I didn't do that. So the first thing I got to do is I got to right-click on my solution, and I'm going to go Add Solution to Source Control. If you don't do this, right, you can do as many commits as you want. It'll never be saved. So you have to add Solution to Source Control because this is a different way we did this time. Last time we clicked on checked the little button that says Add to Source Control, Add to GitHub. Right now we're going to do it right here. So Add Solution to Source Control. Now that I've done that, it might come up with you and say GitHub or Team Foundation Explorer. Please don't use Team Foundation. Please use GitHub. That's the option you need to use. Once I've done that, now I can do my first commit, right? So again, there's different ways of doing this. I'm going to go to Team Explorer. I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to click on Changes, and you're going to see all the changes I made. Here's all the changes. I added a game.js file, a game.ts file. It generated a game.js.map file. That's kind of what Visual Studio does for us. And there's no on-track files, which is good. And I can put in here, again, best practices, first commit or initial commit. Those are the two things you can put in there, right? So let's put initial commit. Again, when we do a commit, we're doing a snapshot. Think about us taking a picture of your code the way it is right now, at this particular moment in time. Every time we do a commit, we take another snapshot of the code. We can compare versions of the code from one version to the other. That's all we're doing. I'm going to click commit. All right, cool. Now I'm going to go to Home, and I'm going to go to Unsync Commits. Oh man, I don't have this URL yet. I need to create a new repository. Let's do that. Let's go into the web. I'm going to go to my GitHub account. You're going to go to yours. I'm going to go click the plus button. Click the plus button. And I'm going to go new repository, right? And this time, I'm going to make another repository called COMP397. Oh man, look, I can't do less than 1 part 2 anymore. It's taken. I need to do, if I do that, it's going to give me an error. It says name already exists. I need to make this part 3 or some other name, right? And then I'm going to create repository. Click the create repository button. Are you with me? When I do that, it gives me this URI, this API link, basically. I'm going to grab it, copy it, or you can click this button too. And then I'm going to go back to Team Explorer and paste it in here. If we've done everything correctly, if I click Publish, right, what it's going to do is it's going to link up my Visual Studio files with GitHub and store them in this remote cloud container on GitHub. That's what this is, right? So now I've got my files right here, right? May 5th, Thompsoniopoulos, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is here, right? So that's all I've done here. I've created a connection between GitHub and my files. Are you with me? I went another time with you guys, right? So you've seen it twice now, right? And by the way, like I said, I'm going to provide the links for you on Centennial so you can see. I'm going to give you a bunch of links pretty soon. One of them is going to be a link to my YouTube video, my YouTube playlist, which you will have so you can look at the videos for this course, right? I usually put the videos up when I'm done. So today what I'll do is I'll go to the school. I'm able to upload them very quickly. And then I'll push them up to GitHub, and you'll have 3 parts, part 1, 2, and 3. Each part will be, you can look at separately, of course. And the great thing about videos to me is you can fast forward and not hear my junk, right? If you don't like what I'm saying, zip, you go to the next part. Zip, you go to the next part. And you can go back and forth until you get what I'm saying and do it over and over again. Okay, cool. So we've done this. Now let's add a little bit, if we can, for the last 30 minutes or so, Create.js. I want to make it, so I want to make a game. Well, I can't do a game with Create.js until I have a specific element called the canvas element. And I'm going to add that into my body tag. So I need to put canvas in here. Let's type this in. Okay, canvas is cool, but I really need to name the canvas ID because I want to access it. All right? So I need to put in an ID for an ID attribute, which I'm just going to call for now canvas. You can make it game, you can make it arcade. I also need a couple of other attributes that I need to fill in. One of them is like a height and a width. So we'll say width. Oops, width. We'll make it at 640, right? And actually, let's make it 320 for now. Make it nice and small. 320 and height, right, of 480, like a little small device, like a mobile device size proportion, right? Okay, cool. So we've done our canvas element. You need this canvas element. All it is a container. This is where our game is going to live. If you don't have the canvas element, it'll never display your game. To test this, without putting any Create.js in there right now, let's go into our main.css file, right? And let's target our canvas element, right? So we know if I say, I'll leave the body tag in there. For now, let's say our canvas element, all canvas elements, right? That's what I'm saying here. I'm targeting all canvas elements. I want them to have a border, right? That is, look how nice it is in Visual Studio. I want to have it a solid border, right? Solid border. That's going to be 1 pixel, right? Black, right? All I'm doing is making it so it's creating a border around my canvas, right? If I save this and I run it the way it is, and if everything goes well, I should have a black border like this, yeah? That's the size of my canvas. This is where my game is going to be housed. My game is going to be contained in this border right here, right? Okay, now there's nothing in here right now, right? If you notice, if I still go back to the JavaScript console here, I still should be getting on the bottom, it should still say game is running, right? That's nothing that's changed there because I'm still initializing that init function. Are you with me? All right, now let's add in the piece parts we need. Well, there's a couple of ways to do this. And if I go to my Solution Explorer, I want to add them into my lib folder, right? And I want to know where these things live, right? So I'm going to go into, we're going to do this again next week again, guys. So please, if I go a little fast at this stage, know that we're going to do another demo of this, almost exactly the same thing again next week to start off with as a refresher, all right? I need to go to my Create.js website. So I'm going to go to Create.js, and if you notice, if I click on Create.js, Create.js has 4 different libraries. It's a suite of libraries that we're going to use. So it's not just one API. There's 3 or 4 APIs we're going to tap into. One of them is called Easel.js, which is the one we're going to use the most, right? There's also Tween.js that allows us, if you know, who knows Flash? Who's ever any kind of Flash work before? If you've done Adobe Flash, Tween.js allows you to do some animation. You can also do that with Easel. Sound.js actually lets us generate sounds. And Preload.js actually allows us to preload our assets so that way we don't access the file system over and over again. That's what we're doing, okay? There's a great docs section, right? And this is what we're going to access over and over again here in Create.js. We're going to go to the docs for Easel.js. This is our API documentation, and it's very well documented. If you actually look through here, every piece of the API is documented, every method that we're going to be using, right? So we're not going to just use JavaScript. We're going to learn JavaScript, but we're also going to learn the API documentation by going to Easel.js over and over again. Okay. This is cool, but I want to download everything, right? So I'm going to go back to Create.js, and I'm going to click Getting Started or Download. If I download, it tells me there's different ways to do this. I can use the CDN. Who knows what a CDN is? By now you should have some idea. What's that? Who's that Canadian? It's not Canadian, right? The Content Delivery Network is what it stands for. And what it is think about our JavaScript libraries to be hosted somewhere on the web instead of locally. Now, why would I want to do that? The great thing about doing it on the web is that they are cached. So if another person goes to a site that uses the same JavaScript libraries, they don't have to load them again into your browser. They're cached in your browser, which allows you, so to speak, with faster operation. For us, when we're doing our development, I want you to use local copies of the files, right? So what I'd ask you to do right now is download the zip files for Easel.js, Tween.js, Sound.js, and Preload.js. So let's do that now. So if I download the zip files, right, I actually have I've already done that. And I've done that in something called libraries, right? So if I go to Easel.js, I get this folder structure right here. Inside there, and I'll let you guys download them. Download Easel.js first for me, please. Here's all the zips, right? So if I download them inside, you have to look at different objects here. If I keep going through, let's go down to lib. If I go to the lib folder of Easel.js master, if you notice, there's a bunch of different libraries in here. You should have almost exactly what I have. If you notice, there is the minified version, right? There is the combined version. There is the next version and the next combined version, right? There's also other things in here, right? All I'm asking you to download is this Easel or grab this Easel.js-0.8.0.min.js, the minified version. And how do I add this in to my Visual Studio? This is the first time we're doing this. Well, you'd think that you can probably copy it in here or add existing files, blah, blah, blah. But the real, true, easy way to do it is do this. Bring up your folder here, your Windows Explorer here, or your File Explorer, if you're using Windows 8, and drag and drop this into the lib folder in Visual Studio. Now you can't do that. See how it's giving me this I can't do that sign? Why? Because I'm debugging. Can't do that while I'm in debug mode. I have to get out of debug mode, and then when I go here, I can drag and drop this right into my lib folder. There it is. Okay, this is good. It's not going to help me with TypeScript though. All right, let's keep doing that. Let's go back, and I want to download Tween.js, Sound.js, and Preload.js. Keep doing that, guys. Download all these 3 for me. Yes. What's that? Are you debugging? Okay. I bet you if I come over there, I can do it with you. Lib folder, the Easel-0.8.0.min.js. Are you guys all having trouble? You can't drag and drop? We're going to take a break in 10 minutes then, so I got to show you how to do this part. easel.js-0.8.0.min.js. Okay, I'm going to do the rest really quickly and get them on there. And by the way, I'm going to populate this all up on GitHub, so you can always go on GitHub and download my GitHub, right? Download the zip, right? I'll show you that in a second. So let's do that. I'm going to go back to libraries, and I'm going to put tween.js in there for a second. So here's my tween.js master. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to drag and drop, right? Drag and drop. Now I have to be I can't be debugging. I can't have I can't be running here for that to happen, right? Let's try this again. Libraries, and I'm going to get my sound.js in there. Here's my lib. And in sound.js, you need this min.js file again. I'm going to do the same thing for my last one, my preload.js file. So I'm going to go in here. I've downloaded my preload.js file now too. Right, so here's my preload.js. And I'm going to go into my lib file, and I'm going to drag and drop my min file. Here's my min file into my lib folder. You guys able to do that? Can't drag and drop. I bet you can. Right? All right, who is able to do it? Good. That's good. It means you guys are doing it right. Right? Again, you can't be debugging. All right? So now these files here, they're hanging out, right? Does my index.html file know anything about these files right here? No, because they're not attached to my index.html file. I got to put them in here for me to use them, right? And the way to do that, of course, is I've got to enter, enter, enter. Give me a little bit of space. And the first thing I want you to drag and drop in here is easel.js. And then tween.js, in this order, please. And then sound.js. And then preload.js, right? And those are the ways that you put them in. And then finally, my game.js is still there. Why? It's always better to load your libraries first so that your game.js will know about them, right? Otherwise, I won't know about them. Okay, this is cool, but TypeScript right now is still non-functional this way, right? Why? Because TypeScript requires type definition libraries. Don't worry, guys and girls. We're going to go over this again and again and again until you guys get this part. All right, so how do I get these type definition libraries in? The way to do that is I'm going to go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager. I'm going to go to Manage NuGet Packages for Solution, right? And in here, in my NuGet Package Manager, when it starts loading, right, I'm going to look for my type definition library. If I start typing easel.js and I look for it, it'll come up with this little blue symbol that says easel.js TypeScript definitely typed. That's what you want, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this type definition library, which is going to define all of my classes, my specialized classes, because TypeScript doesn't know about easel. It's modular, right? TypeScript or JavaScript has no idea all the classes involved, but this is a map of all of our classes that's inside easel.js for our game framework that we're going to use, right? So I need to install this thing and press OK. Now it installs a bunch of files. I'm not going to close this up yet because if you notice over here, it actually created a new folder called typings. Let's leave that alone, right? Let's go for the next one. Easel, I need tween.js as well, right? Tween.js. Here's another one. Here's tween. Oh wait, I got a check mark in tween.js because you know what? When I installed easel, it installed tween as well, right? How about sound.js? That one can cause problems. We'll talk about this one in a second. And let's install that one. Press OK. All right. And then we got one more. We got one more, and we got preload. If I got preload.js, here it is right here. It's been already installed. There's also sometimes one more that I need called create.js, right? And if you notice, sometimes it's installed and sometimes it's not. You have to give it a second to find it. By the way, I see all these errors, these red lines here. I got errors, right? Why? Because of my sound, and we'll fix that in a second. There it is. I got this one. Look, create lib, blah, blah, blah. Why is this the right one? Because 1.22.2015 is the correct version. If you do this one, this is 7.2.2014. That's bad, right? So leave it the way it is. If it's checked already, you're good to go. Close. Don't worry. All this stuff is going to be on GitHub in a second. So I'm gonna upload it. We're going to sync up, and you're going to have it all. Don't worry, Ali. I know you're nervous about it. You're nervous, man. I know. All right, let's go to typings. Let's go to typings, and I see my web audio API has an issue. Why? Because I have 3 different typings in here. I only need one of them, this WAAD file. I'm going to get rid of these by deleting them. And when I do that, I have no errors. Except I do have an error, right? Yeah. And by the way, guys, I frequently run into this issue over and over again when it comes to web API, right? And we're gonna fix this problem. Why? Because, like I said in the beginning of the course, I can make a textbook, and then 3 months later something changes on the web, and now we got to fix it, right? If I was to do this again, if I was to get rid of Sound.js is loaded here again, so now I've deleted the files. How do I get them back, right? I can't necessarily undelete them because they're gone, right? Now they should exist still. If you did what I just did, they should still exist somewhere in my recycle bin, right? And I could restore them, right? But here's the problem: if I restore these files and I go back into here, do they show up? How come? Because Visual Studio doesn't see them unless they have to be registered with Visual Studio. And the way to do that is to right-click on the folder and go down to Open Folder in File Explorer for a second. And if I go into File Explorer, I can see the files, right? And I can go down into Scripts. I can go into Typings and into Web API, right? The Web Audio API is what I want. And if you notice, I can install these things back in. So let's just do that. So I'm going to drag and drop them back in to show you how they come back in. They're already there. All they need to be is registered. Right? See that? Now if you notice, this one and this one have a problem. So it's either one of these two, not this one, this nightly.d.ts. So if I just delete one of them, like this one here, theoretically, we should not have an error, right? And let's undo that one again, right? Sorry guys, I hate doing troubleshooting with you guys online. It's just it's a fact. It's a matter of, it's just the way it works sometimes, right? And you got to learn to be thick-skinned when it comes to this stuff. I'm not nervous about it at all. Worst case scenario, you know what we do? We don't include the audio piece today. But it doesn't mean that we won't add it tomorrow, right? And I'll figure that out, right? Let's just add that back in. Because one of these things is causing an issue. It's either this one or this one. Both of them are having issues, right, if you notice. One or the other, but not both. Let's try this one, the nightly one. No. Don't worry about it. Like I said, we're gonna fix it. And the way, of course, to fix it is not to include them. So if I just take them out for now, and they're just the typings. All the other type definition libraries, they'll actually work, right? But for now, if you look at sound.js, sound.js requires a d.ts file with a web API. I'm just going to remove it for now in this particular example. And when we get back next week, I'll have this all fixed up. All right. Let's just go back now to this thing. So here's our game.ts file. I want to create my the stuff that I need to create. One of the things I need to create is a couple of variables. Really quickly, I'm going to go a little bit faster now so we can finish, right? Var stage. Thank you. Var stage, right? Well, we know if we have typings, I can start typing in a couple things here, but there's a problem. I still don't know anything about my create.js library until I pull some of these typings in. So what I need to do is I'm going to grab easel.js and just drag and drop it in. And what it does is it creates a reference path for easel.js up here, right? I'm going to do the same thing for, for now, all I need is easel.js. I'm not going to do tween or anything else. I've included them, but I only need this one. And now if I go create.js, it comes up, right? create.js.stage. All I'm saying there is that my stage is of type create.js.stage. The reason why I can get this, and you may not, is because I pulled in a reference path to this thing. I'm going to show you this again. Don't worry. Okay, that's number one. Now the next thing is I need a canvas element, right? Var canvas, right? And my canvas element, I need to make a reference, right? Document.getElementById. We need to make a reference to the canvas element that I created, right? Which is the container that's on our index.html file, right? Once I've done this, these two pieces, I can actually instantiate. I'm just going to get rid of this console.log for a second. I'm going to say my stage, right, is equal to a new create.js.stage, capital S, and I'm going to pass in there an instance of the canvas or a reference to the canvas element on stage, on the document. So that's all I'm doing is I'm saying this. I'm saying wherever my canvas element is, right, I'm going to make that my stage where I'm going to place all of my assets. That's all I'm doing here, right? We're going to go over this again, like I said. Okay, the first stage. The next thing I need to do when I create my stage, right? So I've got my stage, right? That's cool. I've got to create a game loop, right? And the way to do this, because every game has a loop, right? It's almost like something that keeps going over. I want to be able to refresh my canvas element over and over again, right? So the next piece I'm going to add in is my ticker element. And I'm going to do a create.js.ticker, right? And I'm going to say set FPS. Don't worry, you'll learn all this later, right? 60 frames per second, right? So what this is saying my game loop, right? My game loop is 60 frames per second. It's going to fire or trigger 60 times every second. I'm listening 60 times every second, right? Okay, that's the second thing. And the third thing I need to do is I need to create a listener and a handler for my game loop, right? So I'm going to say create.js.ticker.on, right? And on is like saying on add event listener, right? I'm listening for the tick event, right? And I'm going to fire up my game loop, which I don't have yet. My game loop is going to give me an error because there is no game loop yet. You should see this too, yeah? All right, let's do this. I'm going to make a new function down here called game loop. Oops. And inside my game loop, 60 times per second, I'm going to do a stage.update, which means every time, every frame, right, I'm going to refresh the canvas over and over again. So any changes I make to that stage is going to change. This is how we make our games, right? We need a game loop when we make a game. Are you with me? Some of you maybe, some of you maybe not, you know. And let's see what our JavaScript looks like, just because I'm curious. It looks almost identical, right? Except, guess what? I don't have any typing for my stage, right? Again, the type script allows me to do this because, and what I want to do this is so that way I can get code hinting for this stuff. So I don't have to write it on my own. I don't have to remember everything with code hinting. All right, so here's my game loop, right? Well, after my game loop runs, I want some kind of main game to run. So I'm going to call my main function. Well, there is no main function right now, but I'm going to call it. Let's do that, right? Well, now let's create the main function down here. And in here, I want to console.log, right, game is running. Because now I know if everything runs properly, and I've gone through this with no errors, that this will run, right? So I'm putting that log command in there to test my game out a little bit more. Right, I saved everything. And now I'm going to run it and test it. Okay, as long as I don't get any errors, I got this. Let me just by chance, here's the methodology. Here's workflow for you. Workflow. Whenever you make this run, refresh, okay? Because sometimes things are cached. So let's refresh. And then now you know it's running. Let's check our console. So more tools, JavaScript Console, right? And down there we know game is running, right? And we know this version of our game is running. Now there's nothing in here. We need to put something in here, right? And we will, right? We're going to put in a new object, right? We're going to go into inside our main. If we know everything is running properly, we're going to say var, hello text, right, is equal to. Actually, we'll make it so. Sorry, we'll define it. Hello text is of type createjs.text, and it's equal to a new. It's going to make a new object of createjs.text as a text object. Let me just stop debugging to give us more room. And I'm just going to unclip this to give us more room in here. You don't have to do that. And in here, if you notice, here's my type definition. This is what the TypeScript does for me. It gives me code hinting for my JavaScript. You won't get that without TypeScript, right? Okay, so what it says, look, I need some kind of text as a string and a font and a color, right? So my text is going to be hello world, of course, right? And my font, well, I'm going to name my font Console Us. Why not? Right? And it's going to be definitely something like, I don't know, maybe let's make it 40 pixel Console Us, right? Because that's pretty big. And my color string, here's my color string down here. That's the next piece I need. Well, how do I make hexadecimal colors? Let's make it yellow. What's yellow in hexadecimal? The hexadecimal colors. Come on, Ali. Come on.
0, 0.
What do you mean? You're an expert. You said you're a master.
0, 1, 2, 3.
No. Thank you.
Okay, I was gonna say that.
Right? When I do that, if everything is correct, right? By the way, it's giving me this little squiggly line on a pixel because I don't understand what it is, but it actually is correct, right? I'm just gonna say add to dictionary so it doesn't have it come up again, right? The one thing I should be doing is what it's telling me is I should be doing this. Right? So 40 pixel console. The reason why it's broken up because again my font is very big, so you can see the screen. That's why it's rapid. But for you, it should be this one. Okay, so cool. I've added my hello text, but it's not going to show up unless I add it to the stage. That's the next step, right? So in order for me to add it to the stage, my hello text is now an object. I'm going to add this object to the stage with a special command. So I'm going to say stage.addChild, right? Hello text. And what this is going to do is take the object I've defined with hello world with a font of 40 pixel Consolus, that's yellow, and throw it up into my stage. It should be inside the middle of that area here if everything is well. Let's try it out. Yes. You just can't see it because it's yellow, right? Let's make it black so you can see it a little better. So what's black? Come on, guys. Ali, what's black?
All zeros.
All zeros. You got that one. Okay, good. Right? And let's go back in, and we'll refresh. And there it is. There's black. Now, if you notice, it populated right here on the top left corner of the stage. Why? I haven't told it where to go. You have to be very specific with your text. If I want it down in the middle somewhere, I know my stage width is 320. I know my stage height is 480, right? If I want it to be in the middle, it's going to be like 240 down, right? So I would say that my y coordinate then, right? And by the way, x and y coordinates, we're almost done. I know I'm running a little bit behind. My y coordinates, my x and y coordinates is 0, 0 on the top left corner of my stage. If you know math, I'll say this again next week too. Mathematically, 0, 0 is the bottom left corner when you do Cartesian coordinates, right? Well, not so in computer graphics. Computer graphics always top left corner, right? So 0, 0 is here. So as I go to the right, my x is increasing, and as I go down, which is kind of funny and unintuitive, my y is increasing. So I've got to go positive y and positive x for me to move my hello world down. All right. So let's do that. So how do I do that? Before I add it to stage, I want to go this. I want to say hello text. This is how easy it is, .x, right? I want to move it a little bit to the right. I'm going to make it so that it is like 30 pixels in, right? And if that's too much, we'll fix it. And then hello text .y, I want to move that like 200 pixels down, right? Okay, now let's refresh. Let's refresh, right? So again, all I'm doing is I'm telling it to go here. But guess what? Can I highlight this text? No. Why? It took my text, hello world, and converted it into raster graphics, pixels, right? Can't do anything with it. I can't highlight this thing. I can't modify it. I can't use CSS on it. I can't do anything to it, right? It's just pixels. And this is the beginning of what we're going to be doing with our game. We're going to be controlling all the pixels inside of this canvas, whatever our canvas looks like. Questions? I know it's a lot today, all right? I gave you guys a lot, but that's how the classes are going to be. There's a lot to learn in this thing. If you want to do web games, right, stuff that's cross-browser compatible, right, we need to understand a bunch of technologies. We need to understand a bit of HTML. We need to understand CSS. We need to understand JavaScript at the bare minimum with TypeScript as a superset, right? We need to understand these things. We need to understand Visual Studio. We need to remember our shortcuts. We need to remember how Visual Studio works and how we debug in Visual Studio with Chrome or some other browser, right? We need to know how to upload everything to GitHub like I've forgotten to do. So let me do that right now, right? I'm going to go into GitHub right now. I'm going to go into my Team Explorer. I'm going to pin this in. And I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to go to Changes. A bunch of changes, as you can see. These are all the different changes we made. I'm going to say added create.js structure to project. And by the way, we're still missing our sound.js, which I'm going to fix for you guys. Commit. And when I do that, I'm going to go Home. I'm going to go unsync commits and sync. And now you should have everything on my GitHub, which is visible to you, everything we did today. All right? Next week, we're going to go into more JavaScript. I'm going to try and hand you your first assignment, right, which is going to be due a couple weeks after, right? It's going to be primarily a documentation assignment, internal, external, and a little bit of game, all right? And that's it for me.